Yo, what's up, YouTube? We got playoff predictions here for you today. I wanted to get this out, obviously, before the playoffs started. So, we're going to go ahead and do that. If you're new here, this is your first time seeing any of my videos, go ahead and drop a sub for me, man. If you are already subbed, go ahead and drop a like, leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this video. And if there's anything else you want me to do, a tier list for the season, some sort of review. I'm already thinking of some things, but if you have an idea, please leave me a comment. I would appreciate it so much. And let's get this started. Try and keep these kind of quick, but also a little bit in detail so you're not confused as to what the hell I'm doing and like why are you picking that. Starting off first, we got Denver at Buffalo. Now, I think a lot of people are writing Denver off in this scenario, and they're saying, yo, Buffalo's going to eat this game up. Denver's done for. Spoiler alert, I think Buffalo's going to win. We'll go ahead and select them now. But I don't think Denver's going to be that bad. I think this will end up being a way closer game than people think it is. I think Denver's defense is really good. I think Sean Payton is actually a good head coach, and he's going to be prepared for what Buffalo has. I still think Buffalo is going to have an edge, even though Sean Payton is going to prepare for him to the best of his ability. Close game, I'd say maybe like a one-score game or something, but Buffalo ultimately is going to come out on top. Next up, we got number 6 at number 3, Pittsburgh at Baltimore. An AFC North matchup in the first round of the playoffs. I think this is going to be a really good game. I think this is going to come down to a one-score game, or a one score to decide the game. Whether that's a field goal or whether that's a last-ditch effort to get a touchdown to send the game to a win, not to overtime for a win. It's going to be very, very, very close. And my money's going to be on Baltimore. Because I think Baltimore has that momentum. I think Pittsburgh has that, like, fall off that they always have at the end of the season. Russ hasn't been connecting with Pickens or with Mike Williams, anything like that. He wasn't last week, at least. If he can connect with them, this game will be even closer than I think it's going to be. I think it's already going to be really close. But ultimately, I'd give Baltimore that edge. Next up, we got the number 5 Chargers going to the number 4 Houston Texans. Now, I think a lot of people, similar to the Denver-Buffalo situation, are writing Houston off here. I don't think you can do that. I think that Houston's defense is incredible. I think Joe Mixon is a problem, and they still have Nico Collins. That O-line, however, for Houston has not looked pretty all season, and the Chargers do have a pretty solid D-line and a good defensive coach. So I'm going to give this to LA purely because I think that it will be their defense overpowering Stroud's O-line and Stroud not having enough time to get that ball out. And then if they do start running with Mixon, Chargers might let a few go, but then they'll be able to lock him up towards the end of the game, and LA is going to end up with that win. Now, moving on to the NFC side of the wild card round, we got Green Bay at Philly. I think Green Bay looks pretty good. They got some momentum going behind them. However, they did just lose a key receiver and they're down Jair Alexander. I think their defense is still fairly young, or their whole team really is still fairly young, which is, I hate using that because young players can be good. Being young isn't always an excuse. But I think in this case, with the injuries that they have and playing a very, very motivated and on a high Philly right now, I think Philly's going to take this game. My best friend Chris is a Packers fan. Chris, I know you're watching this video. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But I got it. Philly's gonna win that game. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Moving on. The number 6 Commanders going to the number 3 Buccaneers. This, I think, will be the most unpredictable game of the playoffs. Because a lot of people are just going to say Tampa's going to win because Washington is still building. You know, they have Jane Daniels, but he's young and whatever else they want to say. But Tampa has been a toss-up. Tampa either beats some really good teams by a good margin and look incredible, or they just barely beat or lose to the Saints. They barely squeaked in the playoffs. Atlanta could have made it in here. Right? Washington has similar. Washington's lost almost lost some games to some not so good teams. They've lost some games to some not so good teams. And they put up really good numbers against some good teams, i.e. their division rival, Philadelphia. Winning that game later in the season really mattered for them. And for that reason, I'm going to go with Washington because I think they get the job done more than Tampa does. And I just can't see Tampa cooking anything up. that's going to stop the momentum that Jaden Daniels and the offense has. And I think Washington's defense will be able to do just enough to keep them behind. Moving on now, we got the final game of the wild card round. We have the Vikings at the Rams. Now, Minnesota has looked great. Sam Darnold came into that quarterback position and has been doing what he needed to do. Minnesota ended up 14-3, if I'm correct, with that Lions loss. Now, they didn't look pretty in that Lions game, but I'm not going to blame that entirely on them. I think the Lions just brought a lot of pressure onto Sam Darnold. Their defense did okay to stop the Lions because it wasn't an absolute blowout. And then you got the Rams, who weren't a big talking point this season. They didn't kill their division. They were fighting for that spot for a long time, but they ended up winning that spot. But LA does actually, on paper at least, seem really good. And even in the game, I love Sean McVay as a coach. I think Sean McVay is an excellent coach. That defense has honestly been solid enough to get them through games, not allowing too many points. And that offense with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, Matthew Stafford at quarterback, Kyren Williams at running back, and then you got Tutu Atwell also out there at receiver. I think the Rams are a sleeper pick, and this is probably going to be my most out there prediction for this playoff. I think LA can beat Minnesota. I think Minnesota, off of that loss, they don't lose all of their momentum. I don't think that's a thing at all. I think if anything, they'll have motivation. But somewhere in my heart, in here, is just telling me that the Rams are going to upset the Vikings. Go all the way, maybe not. Upset the Vikings, doable, and I think that they're going to. I think that's going to be the biggest upset of the wild card round. Now we move on to the divisional round, and we'll start off on the AFC side again. We're going to go LA Chargers at Kansas City. I'll keep this one nice and short and sweet for you, and we'll get to some more explanations on KC later. I think KC's winning this game. I don't think it's that much of a contest. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I don't think LA is cooking anything that is going to knock the Chiefs off the number one seed pedestal and their back-to-back Super Bowl championship pedestal. LA is just a game that Kansas City has to play in the playoffs. I don't think it's going to be that close, in my opinion. And then the next divisional AFC playoff game, we got Baltimore going to Buffalo. Now, a lot of people are going to get mad at me for this. I've explained already earlier what I think about these two teams. And my honest thoughts on this game is that it's going to be an absolute shootout. An absolute shootout. Like when Baltimore met Cincinnati in the regular season, and we had that game where we went 43-42 or whatever it was, and then 35 or 38-35, whatever those two games were with Baltimore and Cincinnati. I think it's very similar in this Buffalo game. I think this is the best game of the playoffs by far. By far. I think this will be the best game of the playoffs in terms of action. And I think it's going to come down to the wire, just like Baltimore did with Pittsburgh. And hate me if you want to, Buffalo fans. I love you guys. I wish nothing but the best. But I think the Ravens are getting it done. I think the Ravens are going to get it done against the Bills. Kill their playoff dreams, kill their Super Bowl dreams, or going back to the AFC Championships and playing the Chiefs again. I think Baltimore is walking away with that game. Like I said, I think it'll be a shootout. It's going to be such a close game that it's hard to call, but I'm seeing Baltimore come out on top of that game because Buffalo's defense just can't keep up with everything their offense is throwing out, and eventually it'll break away. And moving on to the NFC divisional round, we got Washington at Detroit. Similar to our number 5, number 1 over in the AFC side, I don't think this one's much of a contest. I'm giving it to Detroit. I think Washington, like I said, for the reasons, has been pretty good. But I think when you put that Washington team that is still kind of young and still finding their way, they're able to take down a Tampa Bay who has been up and down all season. But then you run into a Detroit Lions team who is probably the hottest team in the NFL right now. The most hyped team. They got momentum. Most of their defense is injured, and they're still playing out of their minds. I'm giving this one to Detroit. And moving down, we got LA at Philly. I think this will be a very good game. I think LA is going to show Philly that they were meant to be here. I think they're beating Minnesota and not frauding out and putting a fight to Philly. However, I think Saquon and that run game for Philly is too overpowering for LA, and Philly's going to take this game probably by 2 scores come the second half. I think Philly controls the clock in the first half. They let LA get under this. I don't want to say delusion, but we'll use the word delusion that they might have a chance. And then come second half, I think Philly's going to come out of the gates and score. Their defense is going to do a good job of stopping LA, get the ball back, and then Philly is just going to do what they do best and control the clock. And if they need to score again, or if they can score again because LA's defense is just giving way, then they will. Now moving on to our conference championships. We're cooking things up over here. We got the Ravens at Kansas City. Now, I didn't get to give a good explanation on Kansas City in the divisional round because I don't think that's going to be that much of a contest. But here I will give my explanation. I think it's hard to bet against Kansas City. As much as I hate to say that, they are good and they are good for a reason. Whether it's luck, whether they've barely been winning all season, they are good. And Andy Reid is one hell of a coach. And when you put a quarterback like Mahomes out there with Kelsey, with a returning Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, with Pacheco who's back, with their new tight end who's coming out of seemingly nowhere for me, at least I had never heard of him before, Noah Brown, and a defense who is always just solid. Not above average or anything like that, or like crazy where you talk about them, but they get the job done. And I love Baltimore, and I want Baltimore to be able to dethrone KC. But my thing is, it sounds stupid, but until Kansas City loses, I can't count them out. And I don't think that Baltimore can stop them in the conference championships. I think it'll be close, fairly close game, but I see Kansas City walking away from it. I'm not going to try and give you too much information about it because I might contradict some points that I've said before if I try and over-explain myself. So we're just going to say that I think Kansas City's going to win because I do. Now moving on to the NFC Conference Championships, Philly at Detroit. Now Philly is on a roll. Saquon is having a monster season and a team he can actually play with, play well with, show himself, show out. Jalen Hurts is having a good season when he's able to pass the ball, but he hasn't really needed to because Saquon's kind of taken a lot of load off of him. Their defense has been great. Number 1 ranked defense in the league, I believe, or overall defense, I think they are number 1, right? And then we're not even talking about the passing game because their running game and their defense has been such a big talking point. Their passing game is still just as good as it was a few years ago. They have Smith and they have the A.J. Brown and they have Goddard and there are other names again that I'm forgetting. But it's there. Like it's there when you least expect it. And I'm going to flip the whole script and tell you that Detroit and their momentum don't give a single fuck about any of that. Because Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions have been cooking stuff up all season. And I genuinely think that Detroit's toilet paper defense is going to be able to stop Philadelphia. They're going to come up with a way to hold Saquon, so Saquon can't do much. And I think if you put even just a little bit of pressure on Jalen Hurts, that passing game becomes significantly less scary. Although I was hyping it up, dramatic effect, I think it becomes significantly less scary when you put a little bit of pressure on Hurts. You bring just a tiny bit, and I don't know, I just see that passing game crumbling down. And then that Lions offense, again, Eagles number 1 rated defense, I believe, unless it's changed before, since the last time I checked. This Lions offense is a monster. They are a monster of a team to go up against. And I think they're just going to be able to move the ball, even if it takes a while, move the ball, keep getting the first downs, and they'll end up scoring on almost every single drive. I think there's going to be very few turnovers from Detroit in this game. They're going to get at least a field goal on every drive and pull a win out against the Eagles and carry their momentum to the Super Bowl, which they could not do last year. And now it comes down to the big game, Kansas City versus Detroit. I think this is what a lot of people are thinking is going to happen. It's what I believe is going to happen. What I want, not necessarily, but it is what I believe from every game that I am pulling here. I think this is going to happen. And keeping it as simple as possible, given everything that I've said about both of these teams, I want to tell you that Andy Reid and his excellent coaching combined with a great offensive unit and a good defense is going to three-peat and make history, right? That's first thought, given what I was saying about not counting Kansas City out until they're out. But man, there is something about a team that is backed by a coach that has a fire in their soul and a city that has believed in them from when they were shit, which is every team I know, every team that does bad. But there's something about these Detroit Lions this year. It's just making me believe in them too. And I can't help but give them the Super Bowl win. I think it's going to be one of the greatest games we'll ever see. Like the Rams and the Chiefs, whenever they met up that one time in season, they're wearing their color rush uniforms, and it was like 48-47 or whatever that game ended up being, right? I think this Super Bowl ends up similar. I think it's an offensive shootout. I don't know what Detroit's defense is going to look like, or if they're even going to have any of their players back. I know it. Aiden Hutchinson said he could be back for the Super Bowl, and then I don't think Casey's defense can do anything to stop what Detroit's offense has to offer. And so it's just going to be score for score. You can't look away from your screen. It's going to come down to the wire and have a field goal that's going to be a game winner or a game loser for the team involved. And that is my playoff predictions. I try not to go too in detail and give you stuff that sounded made up or sounded like I was trying to understand what I was saying. Just give you my general thoughts. This is how I genuinely think this is going to go. I really don't want Kansas City to make it that far. I would love to see somebody new, but of course you cannot rule them out until they're out, and they're good for a reason. And even if KC isn't that AFC team to make it, I think the Lions are winning the Super Bowl. There's momentum behind them. They're a broken defense, but for some reason they are just absolutely hammering away at teams. And for that reason, I think the Lions are winning. But that will do it for me. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Tell me I'm crazy. Tell me I'm right. Tell me whatever you want to tell me. Go ahead and share this video to a friend. Tell them how crazy I am. Send it to some Packers fans because, again, Chris, I know you're watching this, dog. I'm so sorry. I'm so young. You're not winning that game. You're not winning. I'm sorry. And yeah, man, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and drop that sub for me. Drop a like, and I will catch you guys very soon for some playoff reactions. Peace.